So if you take a look at Google Classroom, and I seem to be struggling, there we go. So if you take a look at Google Classroom, you can see here, here's the graphing worksheet that you're going to make some graphs on. That's at the top, so I'm going to move down one. Here's the population size note that we're going to do, so I'm going to move down again past the owl pellets. And there's the cycling of matter, and you were to make your note or on paper or either on the document. You can see that I've quickly done some answers here, and again, I may not be doing you guys as grade 9s a service by giving you those answers like that, because some of you might be thinking, hey, this is awesome, I really don't have to actually do the reading, I can just wait for him to post the answers, and then I've got the answers. I suppose you could think that way, but please don't. I want you to try to do these the best you can, obviously, and then the answers are there to support you, all right? So if you had one that you didn't quite get, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so this unit on ecology is heavy in a lot of little bits of information, and so I'm trying to give you the information in varied ways. In other words, sometimes it's a note, and sometimes I'm going to get you to read a little bit and fill in some information, but still, this is going to be important in terms of, in terms of testing information. So let me just bring this up, and you can take a look to see if you've got it right. Again, if you're desperately trying to fill in because you don't have it done, again, this is going to be online. It's all there, so you can fill it in at your pace. So essentially, matter, material, and this is really as much a chemistry thing as anything else, the elements, the stuff of an ecosystem has to be recycled, all right? We can't just consume all of a particular molecule or atom or substance and have it leave the ecosystem. And that's because if it leaves, then we're going to run out of stuff, right? So there has to be a cycling of that matter, and that's what we're talking about today, all right? So we're talking about that cycling of the matter. So in this case, we're just reading through here. All life on Earth requires water and nutrients. Water provides the liquid component that makes up our cells. Nutrients are source of the building material and chemical energy. Water and nutrients are composed of physical matter. You'll notice if you read through this, really a lot of these sentences come out of the text and you're just filling in the information, right? Really, we're just getting some information. What three things do we obtain our matter from in terms of us or organisms? Food, water, and air, all right? Every part of every cell in your body is replaced over time. Approximately 2 million, did I get that right? 2 million? 2 million of your red blood cells are replaced every second. I didn't know that, and that just astounds me. But, cells are pretty small. So we're getting, new red blood cells. On average, every particle in the human body is replaced at least once every 7 years. That's exciting. That means all of the matter that is in your body now will have been replaced with other atoms and various things over the process of cells dying and cells growing, et cetera, et cetera. Yes?
You're telling me that we've had two different, full bodies right now? Since we're both
the textbook is telling you this. Do I believe it? I'm not a biologist, but I think they had some pretty smart people writing that. So the answer is, yeah, that's what we're saying. Yeah, which means, like I said, nutrients that you're taking in are used, but if those cells die, then those nutrients will either be removed, from us through the excretory system, being removed by waste, et cetera, but your body is always producing new replacement cells. Okay, so that's not necessarily an ecology thing, it's just an information thing that everything gets cycled. Biogeochemical cycles. All right, particles that make up matter cannot be created nor destroyed. That's a very important statement, actually. In the world of chemistry, we call that the law of conservation of mass. It means that in any type of reaction, whether it's biological or chemical, it means that matter doesn't just disappear. It's all got to be accounted for. Whatever you started with has got to be equal to whatever you end up with, all right, if there's some kind of process. So that's an important thing, which means everything's got to be cycled. We've got to keep that matter moving through the system. Biogeochemical, what a great term. Look at all those prefixes. Bio means living. Geo means location, like on Earth, like geography. And chemical is chemical. So the movement of matter through biotic, that's the bio part, the living things, and abiotic, that's the geo part, where you find the rocks and the dirt, et cetera, in the environment. So really, we're really just talking about the movement of the stuff of Earth through living things and non-living things, all right, as it moves through various things. The water cycle. All right. So I tried to find a picture online that was similar enough to your picture in the textbook, and I think we did okay on that. So you can see here, since I'm recording, I'll point it. The falling of rain, snow, et cetera, precipitation, all right, rain, snow. Precipitation, you might think, is simply used for when we're talking about rain and snow. But in chemistry, precipitation is whenever anything that starts as a certain state of matter, like a gas, and then it's turned into a lower state of matter, like a liquid or a solid, is called precipitation. So when we get to chemistry, if you've got a reaction that's in a beaker, that's in a liquid, and it makes a solid that then goes to the bottom, we call that a precipitate. We call it precipitation. So that's a general term that actually exists for anything that starts at a higher state of matter. When I say higher, I mean the lighter guys, like liquids and gases, and then is turned into the state of matter below it, either a liquid or a solid, and then falls to the ground. So that's a more general term than you might think. So precipitation, and we're talking about precipitation of water in this case, ice and snow and rain and all that good stuff. Some of it goes into the groundwater. Some of it runs along the surface into lakes and then ultimately into oceans, and then also the groundwater ultimately into the ocean. And then we've got evaporation. Evaporation is simply the change of state from a liquid to a gas. Typically, it's below its boiling point. That's what we mean by it's evaporating. We're not boiling the ocean. It's happening kind of at a cooler temperature. And transpiration, and that's a function that plants do. So plants use a lot of water, and some of the water leaves the leaves. Did you hear what I just said there? Exits the leafy stuff. See how it did that better instead of leaves the leaves? Okay. And as it does that, it then becomes a gas and it goes into the air. Okay. So there is our water cycle. Most of the water that is present in the water cycle, is it found in biotic or abiotic environment? Abiotic, in other words, the oceans and lakes are huge. They've got massive amounts of water in it. Even if you total up all the living things and all the water that's in those things, not as big as the oceans and the lakes, all right? So most of the water is in abiotic, non-living things. Why? How do you logic that out? The ocean is big, all right. The carbon cycle. So our bodies are made up of mostly carbon atoms, all right? They're found in very big molecules. In chemistry, we call them organic molecules. They contain a lot of carbon, and that carbon has to come from the environment when we eat other things that contain that carbon. And that carbon cycles through us and then back into the system, to the ground, that type of thing, through decomposers. So where does most of the carbon exchange occur in the carbon cycle? Between carbon dioxide and photosynthesis in plants and microorganisms. I think I got that right. I just pulled that out of the book. Is that correct? Do we like that? So most of the carbon exchange comes out of the carbon dioxide in the air and then through photosynthesis and then into green plants. Large quantities of carbon are cycled. However, where is most of the Earth's carbon found? In carbon-rich deposits, fossil fuels, coal, oil, natural gas. So, most of the carbon in the cycle is still underground, okay? You know, people that drill for oil and dig for coal, they're trying to get that carbon out of the ground as an energy source, all right? And it is a good energy source. because carbon can be burnt into carbon dioxide. That's where all the energy comes from. Okay, so most of the carbon is found underground in these deposits. How do these deposits form? Decomposed organisms compressed over millions of years. You'll notice I'm using very few words because I don't like words. So if we have organisms like really big ones like dinosaurs that all of a sudden die very quickly and then get covered with dirt, over the millions and millions of years, and then as that dirt gets heavier and heavier, it compresses, chemical reactions take place and convert those carbon-rich compounds, those organisms, into basic units like coal, which is pretty well pure carbon, and then other fuels like oil and natural gas. Okay? Have you guys heard that type of stuff before in elementary school? I don't know what your science stuff is like. You've talked a little bit about formation of dinosaurs, maybe a little bit. Not that that's a big deal here, but I'm just curious. Again, it's very teacher dependent. Okay. Define the term carbon sink and provide at least 2 examples of a carbon sink. A carbon sink is a location where carbon can enter or leave over relatively short times. Okay, so in environmental science, I actually took an environmental chemistry. I thought it was going to be an easy course. It turned out to be a hard one, so I wasn't very happy about that. But in environmental chemistry, we study very closely, well, not that I do, but I was told by the professors that they study very closely the movement of chemicals in and out of a particular thing. For example, the air, all right? Things move into the air and out of the air very quickly and easily. Let's say that there's an ocean, water can evaporate into the air, all right? And then it can rain, and then the water will leave the air, okay? When something leaves a body, like the air, the place it goes to, we say, is the sink. In other words, it's leaving it and it's going into the sink. You can think of it like a kitchen sink. You've got the water in the sink, right? You unplug the plug and it goes down the drain and it's leaving the sink itself. It's leaving it. It's going into somewhere else. So a carbon sink is a place where carbon, like carbon dioxide, can leave the air and go into something else, all right? So that's called a carbon sink, a place to put the carbon as it leaves the air. Carbon dioxide dissolves very well in water, so dissolving carbon dioxide, say, into the ocean. You've all encountered carbon dioxide dissolved in water. How many people have had a pop today? Oh, that's encouraging. That's only a few of you. If you've drank a pop today, then you've drank a solution of carbon dioxide dissolved in water, okay? Pop is made by dissolving carbon dioxide in water, and it results in what is called carbonated water, okay? The companies that make the pop, they push a lot of carbon dioxide into the water to make it fizzy. When you open the pop, the carbon dioxide's trying to get out. And so all the bubbles are bubbles of carbon dioxide. That's why it's sometimes called carbonated water, because you've put carbon dioxide, well, the companies have. Well, I guess you could have. How many have heard one of these soda streams? Okay. If you have one at home, you know that you got to put a little cylinder of carbon dioxide in there to push the carbon dioxide into the water. And that's because carbon dioxide doesn't really like to go into water very well. You'll learn in chemistry why that is. But you can push it in, put a lid on it, trap it, then take the lid off and it comes all out. And if you shake it, it comes out really quick. All right. So if there's a lot of carbon dioxide in the air and the ocean is there, some of it will go into the water. All right. So the ocean itself can be a carbon sink and dissolve that carbon dioxide. Okay. All right. Okay. So the ocean can be a carbon sink by dissolving carbon dioxide. Plants are a great carbon sink because we've already seen in photosynthesis they take that in and they turn it into sugars. Okay. Here's a little picture of the carbon cycle that even has the labels on it. The question above says, list the 2 main sources of carbon entering the atmosphere. Combustion. You can see there all the ones pushing up, or I guess this one here So this thing here is burning some stuff, combustion. And number 2 up here, pushing up here, cellular respiration, and that's when we exhale and send the carbon dioxide out into the atmosphere. So that's not a sink. That's us adding to carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Okay. All right. And you can see here the other guys that are causing it to move around. You know, if plants and animals die, then they'll decompose. They can get pushed down and become fossil fuel. If we take the fossil fuel out of the ground here in number 8, which doesn't even have a list there, but that number 8 is bringing the carbon back up to the plant where it might be burning it and then turning it back into carbon dioxide and moving it up there. Okay, the nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen is very important to plants, all right? Most fertilizers are made primarily of nitrogen compounds, and so cycling nitrogen through the system is also a very important thing. Nitrogen is extremely abundant in the atmosphere. About 80% of the air you're breathing in right now is nitrogen gas. Nitrogen enters in leaves through complex biochemical pathways. What is nitrogen fixation? Certain organisms in the ground can convert nitrogen gas into nitrates, nitrites, and ammonia. Awesome. 3 terms that you will learn if you continue on in chemistry. And they have nitrogen in them, obviously, and plants can use these chemicals really well, all right? Plants can't use the nitrogen in the air. It's in the wrong form. It actually has too strong of a bond between the nitrogen atoms. It doesn't work. So the organisms can break that bond and turn them into different compounds, which then can be used as fertilizer, all right? What are 3 ways that nitrogen can be changed or enter the Earth's soil? Nitrogen fixation, we talked about that up there. Fertilizer. Decomposers can put it back in there. And actually lightning can do it as well. Lightning can break the nitrogen bonds and cause them to react with oxygen to form all kinds of things. All right. In what way do human activities influence the water cycle? Now this is just me pulling things out of my head. This wasn't in the textbook. So I said things like hydroelectric dams, right, to control it, to control where the water goes. Irrigation, if we're talking about agriculture. Does anybody have anything else, how humans can change the water cycle? Anybody want to add to that? It's not a big deal. Yep. Deforestation can cause increased runoff. You bet, that type of thing. It can also change and affect the transpiration through the leaves. Excellent. Deforestation. Anybody else want to add anything? Yeah, it's not a big deal. Yep. Can pollution affect the water cycle? I guess it can affect where the water is flowing. It would depend on the chemicals. I'm thinking it from a chemical standpoint because I'm a chemist, right? Certain chemicals of pollution can get into the air, react with the water in the air, and produce things called acid rain. But it's a very low level. I wouldn't necessarily call it a disruption. Yeah, pollution, that's a tricky one. You know what I mean? Because pollution is a very broad term. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, all right. Carbon cycle. So how can we mess with the carbon cycle? Burning fossil fuels. So digging up all of that oil and all that coal and burning it and sending all that carbon dioxide into the air. That releases it too fast. Yep. Ooh, cement production. Yeah, that reaction produces carbon dioxide. And that's a massive amount of carbon dioxide. Excellent. Forgot all about it. Yep, cement production. You bet. There's a lot of cement in the world. Anything else? Anybody have anything else? Disruption of the carbon cycle? All right, that's fine. Name 2 human action. Sorry, nitrogen. Oh, the nitrogen cycle. What can affect it? Artificial fertilizers. So, you know, we live in a rural area here, obviously. Loading the soil with fertilizer that you've spread on there, that can get into the water and then can disrupt the way the nitrogen cycle is functioning. Somebody had something else? No? Okay. Name 2, again, I'm just kind of going quickly over this so that you've checked your work. Name 2 human action needed to slow climate change. I went with like electric cars and et cetera, et cetera. you know, burn less fossil fuel, all that type of stuff. Yep. Sorry? Reduce water waste. Water waste. That would be more of a water cycle concern. Climate change. Can that change the greenhouse effect? Water. I'm not sure if that's a climate change effect. It's not that big of a deal. It's okay. What else was I thinking? I had another idea. Burn less fossil fuels, right? We're talking primarily of carbon dioxide in the air. Methane can also cause trouble, but that's something else we don't want to talk about in this course. And then I forgot that I didn't even notice that there was, you know, I didn't even notice that that question was there. Describe some ways that climate change might influence the water cycle. Anybody have anything there? Yep. That's correct. So we're going to release all that in there. So I like that as well. I'm not going to write it on the board, but melting ice caps. Melting ice caps. What's going to happen to the water if it gets hotter? Yep. Yes. Increased temperature will result in increased evaporation. Okay? If there's more evaporation, this is going to result in increased storms. That's the way I would put that, with less words than what you said. But your words are good. Increased temperature results in more evaporation. More evaporation puts more energy into the atmosphere, which then results in worse and more frequent storms. Okay? Awesome. Any other questions or concerns on that? Again, I went through it quickly. That's going to be online, except what I forgot to put for the climate change effect. And again, that's now then part of your notes. Awesome. So I'm going to just stop this, and because I want to make 2 videos on this one. Let